This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Pierre Nugent, who we will see today.
Every freaking time. Hang on.
Hold on. What happened?
There's a thing with this. I'll get it.
Okay.
Y'all talk.
Welcome in. Pierre Nugent joins me most every Thursday. Not next Monday, but the Monday after. We're going to move his day. So it's very exciting that people who don't normally watch on Monday or can't because of their schedules will now get to be big fans of Pierre. And I can see him on my screen. But did you restart the monitors? Okay, good deal. But anyway, Pierre, I want to start out we have huge news in college football and NFL football with Jim Harbaugh. You've covered him in the Big Ten. There's a lot to talk about with him. We talked about him yesterday and his legacy. I'm very curious in your opinion about it. But first, you and I share a love of let's just call them the Viacom family of game and reality shows like The Amazing Race, The Challenge, Big Brother. We are there together. Have you watched, and I don't know if you're completely current, this new challenge, The Battle for a New Champion?
Oh, I have not missed a single episode, and I am all the way caught up. Yes. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for asking.
Yes. Okay. So, look, I know the chat will probably just be like, what the F are they talking about? But for you and I together here, I do need because my wife and I watch it, and this one's very interesting in that they've had 3 phases and they keep changing the rules, right? Of how you get eliminated, who eliminates you, and all those things. CT was last week, which my favorite challenger of all time. He's the best and eliminated Asaf. And there's all this anger that goes into when people vote, which they have some really smart people in the house, but you put enough people in a house doing the competition for so long, it's amazing how myopic and stupid they get, right?
Yes.
It's funny because you got people who are smart and do these things, but then you watch them and you're like, well, man, you should sound really dumb right now. But the whole discourse with Jay this week, I'm curious how you felt about that.
Well, first and foremost, I've been watching this show for 20 years.
Yeah.
So this show is vastly different now than it used to be, and not for the better, in my opinion, because they're so competition focused now. It used to be the competition and the challenges were secondary to everybody going and partying and hooking up and fighting with each other. That was the show. That was the show. But I digress. At the end of last week's episode, it's so funny that you bring up Jay, because at the end of last week's episode, I said to myself, I didn't really have a strong opinion on Jay one way or the other. But after last week, I am completely off of him. I'm completely I've had it with him thinking he runs this house, with him thinking that he's the belle of the ball in this house. The only reason why he's around is because everybody knows they could beat him in a final. And he's probably the only one that doesn't know that. So Jay, to me, is a complete tool bag. So, I mean, he can do he can run around thinking he's, the cock of the walk. But in my opinion, no, I absolutely off Jay. I really had no opinion on him. I had no hate toward him going into last week. But now, completely off of him.
Yeah, no, I'm very much Team Horacio in this.
Oh, 100%. And it's and we should, Paul, you and I should absolutely hate Horacio, because I don't know if I've ever seen a more handsome man on television in my time. And it just angers me. I have to look at him and think to myself, that could have been me a long time ago.
Here's the deal.
It never could have been.
Everything that I'm not, Horacio is.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's and he might have some of my qualities. I just don't see them, because
right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, he's and he a professional soccer player, and
yeah. The guy could run from coast to coast, without getting tired, and he's, having this cute little romance with Nerys, who is just absolutely beautiful. So it's just what doesn't this guy have? This guy's got it all right now.
You know how we did it? By not trying in the slightest. Like,
Yeah, I know.
just being himself. No, that's why I think I like him. Is he's like, in spite of the fact that he's like, this professional soccer, like he seems normal, and like a lot of those people, you're like, you are not normal. Like That's why I've jumped on board with him and Ed, because they feel like normal, fun guys that are just normal people. Yeah, Ed went to Cornell. Like, so like he's one of my old co-hosts, our old employees here, JD Piquel, who's now at On3, doing very, very well. We're very proud of JD. He'll probably be on the show here soon. In fact, I got to call him and set that up. But JD and Ed were in Cornell together. So
wow, no kidding.
Yeah,
how about that?
Yeah. So it's a very small world. And I've told you before that one of my really good friends in the comedy world, who I went to FSU with, is a producer, Michael Nelson, on the show. So yeah, he's a good friend of mine. And it's all I can do, like when I'm watching, not to like text to me like, hey, tell me just what happens.
Yeah, please do. Yes.
Yeah, I want to be surprised. But to business, and Jim Harbaugh is now the coach of the Chargers. This is something that the football world's talked about. You and I talked about it early on when a lot of the talk was about the Bears. And then we were kind of like, well, wouldn't you rather have the Chargers job? Like, you have Justin Herbert, you have Rashawn Slater, you have Bosa. So the three of the cornerstones you need, not to mention Derwin James and some other pieces there that are pretty good. Like, you have four pieces there that you can build around that, and the Bears wasn't even open, but a team like Washington doesn't have. And so I think this is an excellent hire for Los Angeles. I think this is the best for Jim Harbaugh, and I think he's going to win there pretty quickly with Justin Herbert, who's already a good quarterback, and I think Jim Harbaugh can help make him into the great quarterback a lot of people think he can be. But from a college football perspective, we've seen the end of an era, because I don't think we're going to see Jim Harbaugh coaching a college football game again.
I don't think so either. I mean, for Jim Harbaugh, the fact that he got to coach at Michigan, the dream job that he always, called it, and winning a national title, going out on top, even though he, maybe kind of sort of cheated. We don't know. Yeah. But the fact that he gets to go out on top at Michigan, what incentive does he have to ever go back to college? There's, to have to get involved with, the recruiting and all the rules. Well, but, in all fairness, college football could look a lot different in 5 years, in terms of what the NCAA looks like. But as for right now, it seemed like out of all the jobs that were available, the Chargers absolutely was the one that seemed like you could easily hit the ground running with the exception of maybe Seattle, depending on how much you really like Geno Smith. But, I think that it seemed like that was the destined marriage, the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. That it felt like a bad kept secret, So I think it's a home run hire for the Chargers. I think it's going to pay off dividends for the Chargers down the road, and it sets up Justin Herbert beautifully with a guy who understands quarterbacks and did wonders in San Francisco. So I don't think it could have turned out any better for the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, no, and the thing is that like he and the GM got sideways in San Francisco, and that's why he was out the door. Instead of like, all right, well, we know we have a coach who can get to the Super Bowl. Let's work through this and refresh our personnel. Well, now like whatever GM they hire is essentially going to be Jim Harbaugh's assistant, right? Like Jim Harbaugh is going to be in control of that. And that's how you need to, like, there are certain guys, like, that's how it needs to be. Now, we're seeing that less and less. Look, Mike Vrabel had a lot of personnel control. Now it's all on Rand Carthon in Tennessee. Pete Carroll, he's, off into a, kind of a mascot role for the Seahawks now. And, John Schneider, their GM, is in charge. Like, that's just kind of how some things go. But if you're going to, roll the dice and try to win for the first time in your history, a Super Bowl, and you want to go get a guy who knows how to win championships, then, he hasn't won a championship, but he did get San Francisco to a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick running the pistol. So, this guy's adaptable. He's really good. I think a lot of people, it's easy to vilify Harbaugh because he's a weird guy. He's a very strange, weird guy, especially in like the coaching ranks, and not like all time the good kind of weird, but I would say eccentric is what you could call him. You know, he doesn't really care about like what you think of what he's doing. He's going to do things his way, and he's going to get there. But he really is quite a brilliant coach. Like, he's really smart, and he sees a lot of the angles, and he's willing to try a lot of different and new things. And people who play for him love to play for Jim Harbaugh. Like, that's something that is never enough credit for. And so, you know, I think that, you know, we see things in the college football world, and everybody's all ready to vilify something we don't like. But, you know, and look, whatever happened and whatever they did, you know, I don't even know. Like, I was saying yesterday to Garrett that I was not, and Jacob, who's here, like, I'm not even sure if, like, we were in court trying, like, that was the prosecuting attorney. I went to the judge, and I was like, we're here to charge Jim Harbaugh with filming sidelines. And the judge would be like, well, how many years are you asking for? I'd be like, how many years should I ask for? I don't. Why don't you tell me? I don't know. Like, is this a felony or a misdemeanor? Look, you're the judge. I'm the lawyer. You tell me. Like, well, you're supposed to have this. I have tons of evidence. Don't worry about the evidence. I just don't know comparatively how big a deal this is.
Right.
So,
you're just there. You're there to provide proof. They're there for the sentencing. The sentencing is not your job. Yes.
Yeah. Like, what are you asking for? I'm asking for whatever you think is fair, sir. And they're like, well, usually, you know, we start out here and then we come to some sort of agreement. I have no idea. And look, I don't think it was right. I don't think the way that they went about it was right. I think the bigger thing is, yeah, you were trying to get one over on everybody, and when you got caught, instead of, like, you know, and they, like, his side of it, like, the whole discourse of, like, well, you're stupid for caring. That's where I was like, well, no. Like, you know, we want to know, like, how are you doing this? Like, what needs to change? And it probably, like he has, look, there were no satellite camps before Jim Harbaugh in college football. And then he started doing them, and then they made them legal, and everybody does them now. And no one was against it but conference commissioners. All the other coaches were like, that's a damn good idea. I don't care how weird he is and how he off-putting. Like, we're going to do that. Like, let's do that. And then he was really smart about it by, when the people were pushing back, he's like, look, any coach who wants to come here to this camp can come to this camp. And so even ones he didn't like were probably like, well, now I got to go. I don't want to look like that guy. So, yeah, those things, you know, he, for lack of a better term, I mean, it's not lack, but he's an innovator. And, you know, sometimes, like, you know, I'll compare him to Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, but was not exactly the nicest person in the world. But we're not lighting candles to read books anymore. So, you know, whatever.
Yeah, and if memory serves me right, I don't know if, you know, we might need Garrett to look this up, but I'm just going off of memory here. But in his first year in San Francisco, he took over for a team that I don't even remember what their record was the year prior. I think they were a middle of the road team, like a 5 to 7 win team, so maybe 6 to 8, somewhere in that area. And if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me right, in the first year of him at the helm in San Francisco, they went to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Against the Giants.
Yeah, they were 6-10. They were 6-10 prior to that, then 13-3 in 2011 went to the NFC Championship.
There you go. In his first year, Alex Smith was still the quarterback. I think he was still the starter at the time. He actually, now I know for sure he was the starter at the time. And they go to the NFC Championship game against the Giants. I mean, just a remarkable turnaround in a year. That's hard to do in the NFL. That's really hard to do. And he made it look effortless. It was really only the final year that he was in San Francisco where things really fell apart, because he went to, it was the NFC Championship game, Super Bowl, NFC Championship game again. So the streak, the 3 years that he put together of really good football in San Francisco really showed me something in terms of how good of a coach he is and how he could really put a staff together and really put personnel together. So there's no reason not to trust Jim Harbaugh, you know, in terms of being your head coach in the NFL. I remember when Stephen Ross, you know, had Tony Sparano as his head coach, and he tried to hire Jim Harbaugh behind his back and had to do like some kind of mea culpa presser with him. That was very embarrassing for Stephen Ross, but you know, he's a coveted guy, and the proof is in the pudding with, you know, how he's able to coach. There's no doubt. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do at LA. And from the perspective of Michigan, here's another thing that we are seeing We have not seen in this particular era of college football, which changes like eras by the year now because the rules change or, things get legally struck down. So Washington and Alabama are going to have mixers like throughout the spring so that you can meet your new teammates in a way that a lot of teams who even are active in the portal will not. Like, oh, I am Doug. I'm a safety. Oh, hey, Doug. Good. We need a safety. All 4 of ours left. Like that's how it's going to be. And, Arizona is dealing with that too. Maybe not to as a large extent. Brent Brennan's actually kept a lot of the guys there, but they've lost, probably 12 guys, which is nothing in comparison to what Washington lost, which they might have just been like, okay, we're starting from 0. We need 85 guys. But they, because they lost all their starters to the NFL or the transfer portal. But Sharon Moore is probably going to be the coach there. And in a weird way, Jim Harbaugh's suspension worked out perfectly for Michigan in that, okay, if there was any kind of acid test that you could do on a coach to see if he's ready to be a head coach, it would be, hey, our coach is incapacitated. He's been, you can even say he's been kidnapped by Ohio State fans and kept in a basement. Like, what's going to happen? Well, they did it before the 3 toughest games that Michigan had in the regular season, and he won all those games, including the biggest rival, which is, I can't remember who write this today, but might have been Chris Vanini. When it comes to everybody that they could interview for this job, none of the other coaches, other than Sharon Moore, have a win as the Michigan head coach against Ohio State. And that is currency that, that one coin is worth more than like bags of coins to that fan base. So of all the things they could do to figure out if this guy can handle it, that was the test. You could not, many guys, if you said, all right, Will Muschamp, you're in charge of Georgia because Kirby Smart has gone missing, and we have LSU, Alabama, and Auburn down the stretch. Will Muschamp would be like, I don't want to be in charge. I've done this before at 2 different places. I didn't like it then. I don't want to do it now. I'd rather just be in my job. Does anyone else want to do this? And I think Will Muschamp's an excellent defensive coordinator, but there's not many guys, it'd be hard. I could give you almost anybody in the country, and it would maybe not turn out as well as it did for Sharon Moore. Now, a lot of that's credit to what Jim Harbaugh did to build it up to that point where his absence was not so huge, but even still, that Ohio State game alone, I mean, look, he's 1-0 against Ohio State. That's all that really matters, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of in the middle here thinking well, if you're Michigan, do you really need to go do your due diligence? I mean, should you cast a wide open net, even though you might like Sharon Moore and maybe you want to give him the job, but should you still cast a wide? I know that there was, I saw Brian Kelly's name floated out there and stuff like that. It was how much you really like Brian Kelly at this point in time, I'm not sure. But yeah, in terms of getting the job done and keeping, the team together in times of turmoil, I think Sharon Moore gets a ton of credit. And if he gets the opportunity, good for him. I think that's going to be a great opportunity for him. Like you said, he's already stepped up to the plate, hit a couple bombs, while Jim Harbaugh was away, and why not give him the opportunity? But I think if you're Michigan, I've always just been a guy that feels like you got to check every avenue first. He may still get the job, but I don't think there has to be this automatic thought process that he absolutely has to be the guy just based on last year alone. I mean, this is a decision you have to make that hopefully will carry you into the next, at minimum, 5 seasons. Yeah. So you really have to, unturn every stone, as they say, to make sure you have the right guy and the right marriage moving forward. If he is that guy, great. I hope he is, and I hope he gets the opportunity. But I don't think that there should be this automatic thought process that just because he held the team together last year, that means he is the right guy going forward.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I'm sure they've probably also spent, but also they've also known about Jim Harbaugh going to the NFL probably for
Right.
Like, as long
2
as we've
years
been
at
talking,
this
like
point.
they're 2 years. So I'm sure that they have probably, like, I think this is going to move fast because the due diligence that they would have done has probably already been done in this time that Jim Harbaugh has been taking these interviews. So, like,
Yeah, you're
do you
probably
call
right.
Lance Leipold and Brian Kelly and all those guys and just go, all right, what would be your like, just kind of gauge like what the fit would be? But also because of what we've seen with the rosters at these other schools, just absolutely draining into the transfer portal. The best case they have to keep the roster together. Look, I'll even give, like, I thought Mike Elko coming to A&M would help keep their roster together, and their 2 best players left. So, you know, like, and I know that, like, everybody can have all the money in the world, but if you're ready to go, you're ready to go. But Walter Nolan and Evan Stewart left A&M. But I do think in this particular instance, where you are losing a lot of guys, and Blake Corum and J.J. McCarthy and Roman Wilson and Chris Jenkins and Michael Barrett and Mike Sanistrell are all gone. I mean, like, you're losing Junior Colson. Like, you're losing some really good pieces to that team. The offensive linemen, Zinter and Nugent and Ladarius Henderson, all going to be gone. So, like, all those guys are out. But to keep the core that you've been building for years together, the best thing to do and keep you less busy in the transfer portal is going to be Sherrod Moore, which might even be more valuable right now than seeing if you can get, you know, Lance Leipold or Brian Kelly or Marcus Freeman or somebody else to come take this job, because we've just seen it, like, you know, at Alabama, you know, look, those guys came to play for Nick Saban. Nick Saban's not there. I don't care how good Kalen DeBoer is. I'm going to go somewhere else. And, you know, they were taking NIL discounts because they knew that Nick Saban was probably going to get them paid on the back end when they were pros. So, like, I don't care that Kalen DeBoer is the new hot thing. He might be the next Nick Saban. We have no idea how good Kalen DeBoer is going to be at Alabama and what his future is as a young coach. But in the now, like, people like what they're comfortable with, and clearly a lot of these players at Michigan are comfortable with Sherrod Moore, and that can keep not only the roster together, but a good chunk of the coaching staff will probably stay there too. And even though Jim Harbaugh, I'm sure, is going to pluck 1 or 2 to come with him to L.A., but, you know, they've got guys. I mean, that's what Connor Stallion's job was supposed to be. Eventually, you're supposed to be a bigger coach on the staff than that, but they have guys who aren't, like, out there, you know, voyeuristically stealing signals, but, like, that's what they're going to do. So maybe, and that's why I'm kind of curious to see this in the modern context, is it better to just keep it in-house as much as you can so that you can keep that roster the same? Because otherwise, you know, if a Sherrod Moore doesn't get this job, like, you know, the national champs are going to get gutted.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, he's got a chance to, you know, coach under Harbaugh. I'm not saying he's going to be the exact same guy or play the exact same style, but when he's been coaching under Harbaugh, you know, the way he has been, and like you said, continuity is the perfect word. You know, if you have the players coming to you and saying, hey, we love this guy, we would love to play for this guy, I would imagine as an AD, I'm trying to keep everybody as happy as I can and everything running as smoothly as I can. And if that's the case with Sherrod Moore, then yeah, I'm doing it. I'm probably feeling pretty good about it. But you know, we'll see if that happens. But I at this point, Paul, I would say I would be surprised if he wasn't the guy. I would be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think you've got to do that. So it's really interesting that, like, here we are. Like, there used to be ways to do things in college football, but, like, now it's completely different. Like, everything you do, you know. And look, if I had the opportunity to go to the NFL, like, I would totally do it. I just would, because the calendar and the NFL makes sense. Like, you know, you go to training camp in July and, you know, you start the whole thing again. Then once your season's over, you start scouting and building for the next thing and figuring out what your roster's going to be. And you go to a combine and a draft, and then you have rookie mini camps and mini camp, and you go back and you start the whole thing again. In college football, they're like, listen, the third week in December, you are going to do 7 things all at once while you get ready for a bowl game, try to keep your roster together, sign high school players, sign players who left other programs, and do a bunch of, like, speeches and dinners and things like that where you're like, we really love the team next year. Please give us money. Oh, hey, we're super happy to be here in Orlando for the for the Cheez-It Bowl, I really love Cheez-Its. Can't wait to get a Cheez-It bath. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, no, we're going to have our quarterback. I know he's going to the NFL, but we're going to get another guy. Don't worry about that. We've got some interesting kids coming in on campus. It is, I'm surprised that, you haven't seen, just a coach just walk into, a bowl press conference with, his shirt off. And they're like, what happened? He's like, what are you talking about? I just
that sounds like a storyline built for the Pop-Tart Bowl right there.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that would be that's the next evolution of that game.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that is that is going to be really interesting. So, how those things go. But yeah, I think when you look at college, the NFL, Jim Harbaugh, he also clearly has unfinished business. Because he could have stayed at Michigan and done this over and over and over again and been fine. But, if I was that close to the Super Bowl and then lost it to my brother, too, that's the other thing. Who beats you in the Super Bowl? Oh, the person you love the most in this world. All right, well, let's see if I can do that. And his brother might go ahead and win another one. So, those things have got to be, and I don't think they're competitive in that way as a family, but it is I've seen him experience that. I want to experience that. I think I can do that too. We know that I can do that. I've been really close. I was, if not for my stupid brother, I probably would be.
Something tells me, even though, maybe they're not competitive like that as a family, something tells me that Jim thinks about that every single day. I get there's just something about Jim Harbaugh, just the competitive fire that he has. I have to imagine that he thinks at least once a day that I lost my brother in the Super Bowl. I need to go back for a little bit of redemption. I know some people are probably a little surprised. I don't know if surprise is the right word, but he picked a team in the same conference as his brother. So he probably will have to go through him at some point to get there, depending on how things play out, in the future. But I would be shocked if Jim didn't think to himself, I can't wait to stick it to my brother one of these days in the AFC Championship game if I get the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, nobody's more competitive than brothers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so, that's just how it is. So, yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see in LA. Let's talk about Jim Harbaugh in LA and how fast that could happen, given the things in the next segment, because I'm kind of curious your perspective on it. He almost was the coach in Minnesota.
Almost 2 years ago, yeah.
2 years, he was almost the coach in Minnesota. Yep. And I think part of it was, Minnesota has a GM that's running the show there.
Yes.
And I don't think that's what he wanted. Plus, I also think that even though he might do well with Kirk Cousins, I think that might have been if I'm gonna leave Michigan where I clearly got this team going up, I don't want to have to Jimmy Johnson this thing from the ground up. I want to be able to kind of hit the ground running and go. All right, so when we come back, we'll talk about Jim Harbaugh and building a potential Super Bowl team in LA with the Chargers. This is 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Before we dive into Jim Harbaugh in LA and what that means, Pierre, you are a guy who appreciates a casino or two, are you not?
I've been known to dabble.
Yeah, you are. Have you heard about Patriots and former LSU receiver Kayshon Boutte?
It's so funny that you say that because literally in the last 30 seconds of the commercial break, I looked down at my phone and a buddy of mine just sent me that very story. I haven't read the full story yet. I've only seen the bullet points here, but I had just heard about this no more than 30 seconds ago.
So in 2022 and in 2023, which 2022 was his last year at LSU, Garrett's an LSU fan. Would you give me your review of Kayshon Boutte in 2022?
Straight clown, waste of a roster spot.
There we go. So,
Wow.
And if you wonder, man, I wonder, because he was going into the year, people thought like, oh, holy cow, this guy, he's
so much
on the
potential.
rise. He's the next big-time LSU receiver. He's a playmaker. He's done all these great things. And then 2022 happens, and his mind is elsewhere. Well, where was his mind? His mind was on online sports betting, of which he lied about his age to get on an online sports betting website, which is computer fraud, apparently.
It is.
So, yeah. So I don't know, like, again, I don't know all the things that can constitute computer fraud, but that is computer fraud. And so he's been charged with computer fraud because of that. Also, he made 8,900 bets in a year.
That's a lot.
A lot. Like,
That's a lot.
that is a lot. Like, even if it's $2, like, most of them are minimum $5, right? So, like, even if it's
probably minimum, yeah.
So even if it's $5, that's probably like every time he's just making a $5 bet. That's $45,000 that he's bet in a year.
Yeah.
And some of that, like I know he had some NIL money, I'm sure, in 2022, but I promise you he didn't have $45,000 just laying around. Or if he did, like LSU should have been better. But like that story, it's very strange. And clearly someone has an addiction because there are bookies who don't even take 8,900 bets in a year. Like,
Yes.
like illegal bookies, like guys, knuckle breakers who would be like, 8,900 bets in a year? What are you, crazy? Like, who's going to cover all that action? But he made 8,900 bets.
That's a lot for anyone. I mean, I don't think I've made 8,900 bets in my lifetime, let alone in the last year. So,
like, if you count slot machines, craps, blackjack, poker, any game I've ever played in a casino, I probably am not even to 500. And that's sitting, and that would be sitting for, which I've done when I've been in Vegas or some place that have casinos, for like 3 hours at a time in one spot and playing a game, the same thing for a couple hours. I haven't even gotten to that.
I don't know any sharps, personally, but I do know a couple of people who really, really bet the market hard. And they tell me all the time, you just have to ride the wave. Mm-hmm. You even if you feel like you went 0-4 in an NFL weekend, you got to get back on the horse the next week, because I mean you're gonna go like this, a lot of times. Some days you'll be up, and the emotional capacity to make 8,900 bets in a year and ride that wave is something that I personally, as somebody who does like to gamble, will never understand. That's too much. It's too much of an emotional roller coaster ride, and it's just, in all honesty, that's why. In my own personal feeling, I know that we're trying to pass sports gambling in every single state, but in the famous words of a great former Minnesota Viking, straight cash, homie. That's why I would much rather if you're going to do it, you got to physically see your money go out of your hand instead of just on a phone where you can just endlessly do it over and over again like a game. I think a lot of people are going to get in trouble doing it like that. I think a lot of people are. Yeah, no, I mean, that's why you need, you need safety precautions when you do these things. You need to, look, we have DraftKings as one of our sponsors, and look, they're very adamant about, like, make sure that you have these
things in there because like gambling addiction is a real gambling addiction also doesn't help casinos as much as you would think because eventually,
you stop spending. You're going to stop spending,
but you lose a customer, right? So like you need people to be gambling enthusiasts and not addicts. Like
I have a legit concern. Again, I have to preface this. I enjoy gambling. I really do. But I mean, I know my limits. Let's say that I definitely know my limits. I have a genuine concern over the next 10 years, seeing, the number of gambling addictions go up in men between ages of 21 and 35. Like it's just, I have a legit concern over it. But I don't have time to really kind of counsel people over that right now, Paul. So it's like, bet at your own risk, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like I think that, it is because I think maybe the world's not completely ready for it. Like it's one of the things that it's going to be the wave that you just talked about for everybody. But like, it's going to be weird because there's going to be people like, oh, I can bet on my team now. Oh yeah, great.
Yeah, and that to me, me, number one above everything else is integrity of the game.
Yeah,
I don't care what it is. That you lose integrity of the game, it's over. It is over for you. Like the public will never trust you again, and that to me is such a big thing. It's why I still continue to this day to hammer on Bill Belichick because that was an integrity of the game situation for me, and I will never forget that ever.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like yes, Pierre, you are a man of principle. I will say
I am. Yes. Thank you very much.
You're a very principled and loud individual, and people should listen to you more.
I couldn't agree more.
All right. So Jim Harbaugh is going to be the coach of the Chargers. We know that. We talked about it. They're probably not going to have Austin Eckler. He's going to go into free agency.
Yep.
This like Austin Eckler, Justin Jacobs,
Keenan Allen could be a cap casualty.
Yeah, Keenan, but like there's like all the running backs, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, there's going to be a lot of them out there. So we'll see what he does to fill that spot. And, one of his guys is out there in the draft and Blake Corum. I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe him come in to help Justin Herbert out. But they have the 5th pick. Here's the other thing. They have the 5th pick in the draft and they already have an established quarterback. That's a big deal. They have the 5th pick in the draft, and they already have an established super stud pass rusher. Khalil Mack is also there. I don't know if he's going to make it out of the cap situation. They have an established left tackle. They have like all these things in place.
Yeah,
they've got younger wide receivers. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Like we'll see how that goes, but. They drafted Quentin Johnson last year, so like that's a guy that they have that they can bring up, and there are things that they can do and build on here in year one under Harbaugh. And look, they're in a tricky division because Patrick Mahomes is in that division. I think this is the first hire, and I'm including Sean Payton in this, that anyone has made in that division where the head coach honestly would not care if Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback of the best team.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to affect Jim Harbaugh like it gets in everybody else's head. Because, like Sean Payton might be a bit like bristly and kind of a jerk. I think Antonio Pierce, like I'm really curious to see what he does in Las Vegas. I think he's going to do really well. But when it comes to Jim Harbaugh, like in no way in his mind does he care about anything else that's going on other places. That's how he was able to like slay that Ohio State demon in that the previous coaches were all like, oh, no, I got to beat Ohio State. And he just knew like, well, we're not going to beat Ohio State until we're built better than Ohio State. And then he did that. And so he's not going to worry about like, oh man, we got to beat Mahomes. He's like, well, we just have to be better than them and what they're not good at, and then we'll beat Mahomes. I don't care that he's there. Like, it's not going to affect him at all. He's like, that's 2 games a year, maybe 1 in the playoffs. Like, we're never going to play them more than 3 times. We've got all these other games to worry about. I'm going to focus on that. And that's, I think, where he won't get in his head. Where, like, if you are Sean Payton and you have this whole Russell Wilson situation, all that, you've got a lot more to deal with. Jim Harbaugh sitting in, like, I mean, he might as well coach from the beach based on all the other things the other guys have to do, right? I mean, like, it's a really good situation. And he also, again, will not be intimidated. Like, he won't be upset that nobody goes to the Chargers games. That's another, like, thing to fuel it. Like, hey, I'm going to make the Chargers the cool thing. And that's going to be his deal.
And he very well could. And, with every head coach that comes into the NFL, I'm always curious to see what type of staff they put together. So that's the other domino for me with Jim Harbaugh being the coach of the LA Chargers, seeing what type of staff, who he brings in as his offensive coordinator, his defensive coordinator. I would love to see the staff that he builds. And then after that, I'm going to think to myself, well, maybe they're going to be in contention right away, as opposed to maybe it'll take a year or two and stuff like that. So I'm paying just as much of attention to the staff as much as I am see the roster personnel moves that are going to have to be made with this team moving forward.
Yeah, no, and look, we'll see how they're going to build, what offense they're going to do. It looks like, they blocked Kellen Moore from interviewing for the Bears job, but now they're letting him interview. He's interviewing in Philly. I want to say somewhere else. Maybe I can't remember where else he is. He's got 2 coming up here, Kellen Moore. That'd be, if he's in Philly, this could be super interesting, given that Dallas and Mike McCarthy ran him out the door when he had the number 1 offense in the league.
Yeah.
Hey, we like you have the number 1 offense in the league, but we feel like it could be better.
Yeah. Incredible.
Look, I think it was more about more efficient and what Mike McCarthy was comfortable with, and Mike McCarthy also knowing look, if I don't start winning here soon, I'm going to get fired. I'm going to go out with my boots on. But so Kellen Moore probably won't be the OC there, and we'll see. We'll see what kind of offense Jim Harbaugh runs. He is not someone that has a system, right? His system is what's going to work for the talent that I've got here.
And that's what makes a great coach. Mm-hmm. That how many times have we seen it over and over again at every level of a guy who's got his way, his style, and he refuses to adapt around the talent that he has around them? And how many times have we seen that lead to a coach's demise? Just guys who are just stubborn and in their way of thinking. It's if you're a really good coach, you got to identify what you have and build around that. And I think he's absolutely capable to. Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick are 2 completely different contrasting styles. And no matter the quarterback that was in there at the time in those years in San Francisco, he won with the exception of the final year.
Yeah,
so,
but that also was a roster that was getting older.
Fair. It was, yes. And at the time too, the rest of that roster as well was also very good. It wasn't just, I don't mean to just put all the emphasis on adjusting to the quarterback. Those rosters were very good from top to bottom.
Yeah.
So,
one of the things that does get lost in the Colin Kaepernick debate, that is there's no reason he shouldn't have been at least a backup somewhere else, because we've seen a lot of way worse backups. That's the debate. That's the thing. But it does get lost that the reason that Jim Harbaugh and all this stuff went sideways in San Francisco was Colin Kaepernick wasn't playing well anymore, and the league had kind of figured him out. So that was the deal. Well, that doesn't mean that he can't go somewhere else, be in another system and do that. That got clouded by the whole, social justice wave that Colin Kaepernick kicked off, which, when it relates to Jim Harbaugh, okay, the quarterback you had that you're winning a bunch of games with is not winning anymore. The league has kind of figured him out. And then you're also sideways with the GM, and you kind of want more control. Well, Trent Baalke wasn't about to give it up. Then they went and hired, Jim Tomsula and Mike Singletary, and that didn't work out for them.
No.
It didn't work out for them. It wasn't until, Kyle Shanahan has come in and revital, or maybe it was Mike Singletary, or I guess maybe it was
Singletary was first, and then I think it was Harbaugh.
And Mike Nolan. I'm forgetting Mike Nolan, Jim Tomsula. You had all these coaches around Jim Harbaugh that didn't work out as well as he did, and it just. Not that they're kicking themselves. They've been back to Super Bowl since then. They're probably about to go to another one. With Kyle Shanahan, they made the right choice, but they had to kiss some frogs before they found their prince, man. So
yeah.
And it was because they got sideways. And look, the GM's gone now. All those people are gone. The 49ers are look, if nobody's going to get along here, you're all going to go, and we're going to start from scratch. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan came in and made that work. But yeah, there's a lot that people, maybe don't see about Jim Harbaugh's time with the 49ers, where he was really good. And, there's a reason that I mean, it's been Minnesota and Denver were two. There's one other team that tried to kick the tires on it, but he wasn't quite ready to go down that road. But every year he's been taking calls from the NFL that he was at Michigan, more or less. So this is always going to happen. And the NFL's wanted him back because it's not like there's not a lot of proven dudes who've done it and can build like he can. So for whatever you think about Jim Harbaugh, for the Chargers, this is a great deal. This is a really good deal. This is the best thing they've made. And when you think about the Chargers, for all the cool things they've had, when they had Phillip Rivers and LT and all that, they're just kind of there, right?
Yes.
They've got...
Yes, sorry. Sorry to cut you off. I tell people all the time. Growing up on the West Coast, I was never. Me. I'm a Dolphins fan. We can save that story for another time. But like, I watched a lot of Chargers football growing up, and I tell people this all the time. You can show me a game from 2002, and you can show me a game from 2022, and I couldn't tell. I'll tell you, I don't know what year it is. It's the same game. Yeah. I've seen the same Charger. The Chargers do one of two things every year. They start out of the gate hot and fizzle out lately, maybe even miss the playoffs, or they start like 3-7 and suddenly they win 6 or 7 in a row and they're looking like the hottest team in football, only to crap out in the divisional round or the AFC Championship game. I have watched this. It's a constant, consistent underachievement roller coaster ride. I did never know what I'm getting with the Chargers. That's what that franchise has been over the last 25 years.
This is a team that had Phillip Rivers, one of the best passers in the league.
Yep.
Maybe not maybe. A Hall of Famer at running back in LaDainian Tomlinson. I was at his Hall of Fame induction, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
but LaDainian Tomlinson, who was the best running back of his generation too. Like, you have that guy. You had Antonio Gates, one of the best two tight ends of his generation. You had
Sean Merriman was a great linebacker in his time.
Yeah, all of that. And it just, part of the problem was that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning existed in that world for Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
But outside of it, it's one of those things where this is the first time, like, I've thought about the Chargers making a head coaching hire and going, okay. Yeah. Like, they're finally maybe going, all right, the way we've done it before has never worked for us. We've gotten to a Super Bowl, Also, like, when you get to a Super Bowl with Stan Humphries, like sometimes it can give you a lot of false memes. You can get a lot of false bravado. And then, like, I think that probably, because that Super Bowl, the 49ers and Steve Young and Jerry Rice just took them apart. Like, I think if you see at like the end of the game, like, Jerry Rice is just like eating a leg bone of one of the Chargers DBs. Just
that game was over. That game was over at halftime. That game was over probably even before the end of the first quarter. So. Yeah, that franchise has just gotten to that year where they went 14-2 with Marty Schottenheimer at the helm. I think it was Marty's last year. They're 14-2, and they have that game in the hands at home against New England. And that second half was just an absolute disaster for them. No excuse for that team not to even make the AFC Championship. They would have hosted the AFC Championship game. It's been that kind of story for this franchise year in and year out.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a quick Marty Schottenheimer story. And then we'll talk about the NFL playoffs here in a second. So when Marty Schottenheimer passed away a couple years ago, there was a player here in town, a former player of Marty Schottenheimer, whose name I will not mention. And I said, oh, well, I'm going to get him on. Like, we can get it. Cause we were trying to get LT, but like getting LaDainian on is like it's a process. We'll get him from time to time, but like, he doesn't always just pick the phone up and go, like there's a process. I'm not complaining. He's a big time deal. That's just what it is.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, he's from here in Waco. I've known him forever. Like, it's just one of those, like, he's a big star. You can't, I couldn't just call up, like Bradley Cooper and be like, hey, let's talk about the Eagles. Like, I got to talk to people,
Even though you maybe grew up with Bradley.
I know. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper went to his own high school reunion and, like, helped organize it. And even those people had to talk to his assistant, right?
Correct.
But he, so anyway, I call this ex-player, and I had forgotten the whole story about how his tenure with Marty Schottenheimer ended and how tense it was. And he was like, look, I don't want to speak ill of anybody, but I'm not going to come on your show and write Marty Schottenheimer a Valentine. And I was like, he told me the story, and I was like, how in the world did and I felt so bad that I made this guy kind of relive this moment. I was like, how in the world did I forget that? Because it was kind of well known at the time. And I'll text you who it was here in a second.
Okay.
But like, it was just one of those things I was like, oh, whew. But that was the Chiefs for a while. Now it's not the Chiefs. And it's like the Chargers had it, and like they have it. So this is maybe their Andy Reid moment, I think, with Jim Harbaugh. I think that because if you compare to, look, Andy Reid was getting really close in Philly, but just couldn't get over the line. You get a situation in Kansas City where you draft the best quarterback in the league, and it kind of falls to you, and those things go right. Now here you are coming off a national title, Jim Harbaugh. You're getting one of the most, and probably with Justin Herbert, the most untapped resource in the league. Like really, like it's one of those things like you've hit oil, but you haven't been able to put the well on it yet. It's just like bubbling out of the ground. So
outside of the 49ers, as long as Brock Purdy continues to develop, I'd be hard pressed to find another team right now where I feel more bullish on in terms of their future than the Chargers.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about these championship games. NFC Championship. Who do you have, but who do you want?
Oh, boy. Well, growing up in Northern California, all my friends and family, they're all 49ers fans. So I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for the Niners. Mm-hmm. So, but I just feel like the Lions would just be such a better story because I want it for the Lions in this sense. It's they've never made it. There you have it right there. It'd be a great story. And as I have said this to many people before, all of you journos out there, when Dan Campbell was hired, he was eviscerated for the kneecaps press conference. Eviscerated for it. Where's the apology to Dan Campbell? Where are all you people who wrote about Dan Campbell like he was some kind of ingrate? Where are you now? Where's the apology? Yeah. Because the old school smash mouth football, we love that stuff. Like there's so many football fans who appreciate that and love it. So I would love to see that for Dan Campbell and the Lions and the city of Detroit. It's just a better story. It is a better story. However, I do think the Niners will win the game.
Yeah, look, here's the thing I think about Dan Campbell. The Lions needed somebody who could, you weren't going to go in there and be you couldn't be the smart guy in Detroit. Not that you can't, he's got a ridiculous, and he's a very smart coach. But you can't be the brainiac coach in Detroit after the history of being one of the most laughed at franchises. You have to make people afraid to play you. You have to make people we know that we're going to play Detroit, and we know that we're going to be in for a mess. That is what it's going to be. And that's the attitude he brought. And everybody was, I don't know. And part of it is, I think we're benefited here is that we cover high school coaches, college coaches, pro coaches on a daily basis. So we can see the through line a little bit better than maybe people who just cover the NFL where, look, that stuff works. Sometimes it is more high school-y, or it seems like that. But if you the problem with Detroit was that they just didn't have the right attitude about themselves. They felt the weight of, this 50 years of blah. And Dan Campbell's I don't give a crap about 50 years of blah. I care about this season. This is what I can't do anything. I can't do anything about Scott Mitchell. I can't there's nothing I can do about that. I can't make Barry Sanders unretire and de-age 30 years. I can't do that. I can't help Calvin Johnson. I can't do any of that. None of that is on me. I can't do that. What I can do is build a team from the ground up and do it with intensity. So I think that's the thing that he brought to them.
Yeah, and I would say the one thing that impressed me about him too is his ability to make tough decisions. And last year in the middle of the season, he fires Aubrey Pleasant, their defensive backs coach. It just wasn't. It's flat out. It just wasn't working. I'm getting rid of him. Jamal Williams. While I'm not saying Jamal Williams is the type of running back that is going to carry you into Super Bowl or anything, but if you watched Hard Knocks last year with the Lions and you see what kind of heartbeat that Jamal Williams was for that team and his enthusiasm playing for the Lions and wanting to stay there. And he was a fan favorite, but letting him go in free agency. And when he took the job, everybody was already anticipating the fact that Jared Goff was going to be a one and done quarterback there. And look at the job that Ben Johnson has done with him. Dan Campbell shown me that he can make tough decisions. He stays patient in the right moments as well. Like, he's pressing the right buttons, man. And so I'm awfully impressed.
Yeah,
I'm awfully impressed.
All right, to the AFC now. The football world is collectively tired of the Chiefs winning because we don't like a winner. We don't like a dynasty. We want to see something new. Like, people hate on Patrick Mahomes just because he's so crazy good. Like, there's no other reason to, other than like I don't like State Farm insurance or he uses too much ketchup. Like, there's nothing wrong with a guy at all, right? Like, so that's the other reason people don't like him is like you can't like the flaws are he's kind of annoying. I don't like the way his wife interacts with Taylor Swift. Like, I feel like, and that's just people who like, I wish I was Taylor's new friend. And,
correct.
And I'm never going to be. Like, that's how it is. Like, I like that's, but I do think, though, this Chiefs team, and this is going to be a really, really good game. Both the defenses are excellent. But Lamar Jackson's in his bag right now. And I think he has something to prove to the league because he's heard every which way of backhanded compliments and not really a QB and all these things that have a lot of undertones. And Lamar Jackson has just gone, all right, okay.
Yeah.
Doubt me at your peril.
It's funny with the Chiefs. I don't feel the same type of way about the Chiefs, with the way I felt about the Patriots, because as I established earlier in the show, they were a bunch of cheaters. So that's why I was tired of seeing them, winning all the time. But the Chiefs, the watching that game against Buffalo last week, in my mind, I'm like, where the hell have you guys been? Like, where you been? Where's this offense been the entire season? I know they've got no great playmakers at wide receiver. Rashee Rice is starting to really turn himself into I don't know if he's a number one option moving forward. I don't know if he'll ever get to that number one option type of talent, but the way they ran the ball with Isaiah Pacheco, I'm thinking to myself, how did this guy not get 1,000 yards this season? How? Like, with the way he's been running the ball in the postseason has just been phenomenal. I think they're going to lean on him some more. You're going to have to. You're going to try to have to control the clock as much as you can to keep it out of Lamar's hands. That being said, I like Baltimore in this game. I think Baltimore's been the best team all year long. I don't really see a whole reason to believe that is going to change. And just the elusiveness of when you got like a 3rd and 10 or a 3rd and 11 on Baltimore, and Lamar just tucks it back. Sometimes he goes through his first and second read and it's not there. He tucks and runs it for 12, 13, 14. That's just a demoralizing feeling. You think you're going to get off the field. Baltimore has that ability to just demoralize you like that. And that's why I like the Ravens in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. They've been the best team all year. And, I think here's the key to the game. When you have a shot, you got to score a touchdown. Go for it on a lot of 4th downs because you do not beat Patrick Mahomes with field goals. The only way you beat Patrick Mahomes with field goals is if the blizzard that hit Baltimore last week turns around, reconstitutes itself, takes a bunch of steroids, and comes back and dumps on you during then. That's the only time. Yeah. But if you're in a normal situation where the weather is normal, which it appears it's going to be cold but not bad in Baltimore this weekend, then you're not going to beat Patrick Mahomes kicking a field goal.
Right.
Even with the greatest kicker who's ever lived, in Justin Tucker. You could have him kick 15 field goals. That's 45 points. If you were having him kick 15 field goals, I promise you that Patrick Mahomes is scoring 7 touchdowns. That's just how it's going to be that day.
And one thing I think that's been a little bit under talked about with Baltimore, even when Mark Andrews went down with the injury, Isaiah Likely has turned himself into a tight end one type option. They've got weapons all over the field with Odell.
And Andrews coming back.
Flower. Yeah. And Andrews can be coming back. So they just weapons everywhere. It's not really like it's all that flashy, but they have weapons all over the field, and that's what makes them so tough. It's tough for me to pick against Baltimore in this game.
Yep. All right. Well, Pierre, I will see you Monday after next, and our people will be coming off their weekend and depressed. Well, hold on. Monday after next, we're in Vegas, aren't we?
Yes, we're in Vegas.
Okay. I will let you know about that.
We'll reconvene.
Yes.
I will be in Nashville. You're home away from home on Monday. Okay. So that's why I will be in Nashville on Monday. But yes.
Where are you going in Nashville?
I honestly going with no plan. I already have one dinner reservation. I forget where it's at, but I'll text you. I'll let you know.
Okay,
I'll get a
I'm going to text you a couple places to go and people to ask for, and I'll do that right now.
You got it.
All right, man. All right, we'll talk to you
boys.
soon. All right, this is the triple option on 365 Sports. Lots of Michigan talk, Harbaugh, Jake Butt, Angelique Shingelis, all that coming up on the show today, plus much more. This is 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling